Hey guys, Spirit of the Lie here. In this video, we're going to take an in-depth look at a fan-favorite unique unit, the Cataphracts. It's of course very well known for its ability to negate bonus damage and disrupt the usual counter system that spears and camels typically enjoy against cavalry. At the same time, it's traditionally been not that common of a unit to see competitively, even after some improvements to its upgrade costs. Part of that may be that Byzantines have a lot of good options and counter units already, but I would argue the Cataphract fills a pretty unique role that shouldn't be overlooked entirely. The unit has come up in various of my videos in the past, including the topics of trample damage and bonus damage reduction, but I realized I've never sat down and methodically dug into the numbers comparing Cataphracts to the Knight line to really highlight their similarities and differences, so that's what we'll be doing in this video. As usual with unique units, we'll start things off in the Castle Age. In terms of cost, the two units are fairly similar, with the Cataphract being just 10 extra food per unit. Comparing their stats at a glance, you can see the Cataphract has 1 less attack and pierce armor, but 10 more HP. And not shown but worth noting is the two units have the same attack rate, so we're really comparing apples to apples. A first impression is they're remarkably similar, making this feel like the right comparison. As we look a bit deeper at their hidden attributes though, we uncover some major differences. First, the Cataphract in Castle Age has +9 bonus damage against infantry, which is guaranteed as that damage ignores armor. In many cases, that'll more than double their attack against those units, but in extreme cases can add up to even more. In this example especially, you can see the bonus damage is doing a lot of heavy lifting, keeping in mind the Knight would otherwise have 1 more attack.
Those Cataphracts pack quite a punch.
Adding to the complexity, Cataphracts naturally count as cavalry, but have extra hidden armor that negates 12 anti-cavalry bonus damage. Against most units this won't factor in, but means they're unexpectedly resilient against spear units and camels in particular. That said, this also applies to a handful of other anti-cavalry units that you might not think of right away, with some of them in Castle Age having their bonus against cavalry negated entirely if they have less than 12. Jumping back to finish the comparison to the Knight, both have the same movement rate and also the same line of sight. The Cataphract has a bit quicker creation time at 20 seconds instead of 30, though it has to be said that multiple stables are much easier to make than castles. So combined with the Knight's slightly cheaper cost, the Knight is definitely the easier unit to mass, to the point that can eliminate the Cataphract as an option entirely in some players' minds. So that's how they compare on paper, but now let's try them out against some common unit matchups and see how all the different parts are working together in practice. We'll be focusing mostly on anti-cavalry units, as that's really where we expect the Cataphract to differentiate itself and when you typically think about making it. Just to give a quick snapshot of the two units head-to-head, the Cataphract takes 13 hits from the Knight, while the Knight takes 14, meaning while they're basically even, the Knight should theoretically win with equal numbers every time. With no bonus damage involved, it's fair to think of Cataphracts as roughly comparable in melee to a Knight without bloodlines. If we correct the starting conditions to reflect the Knight's lower cost though, they start to show a fairly significant advantage. So in a vacuum, I wouldn't suggest making mass Cataphracts against Knights, emphasizing we really want to make use of the Cataphract's special abilities to justify it. But now let's try them against Spearmen, as not everyone is going to invest in the Pikemen upgrade. Balancing total resources and upgrades to get a sense of their cost effectiveness, the results are night and day. The Cataphract, despite being outnumbered almost 2.5 to 1, actually win with over 80% of their total HP left. The Cataphracts here lost about 500 resources worth of value compared to the Spearmen's over 1,700. The Knights, on the other hand, are completely crushed even by Spearmen, ending with almost 2/3 of their HP left. This is admittedly an unrealistic scale as I have 29 Spearmen, but that actually puts the spears in a more positive light than you'll probably get in practice, showing how dominant the Cataphract is in comparison. One-on-one, it's a bit easier to see what's happening on a per-unit basis, as Cataphracts are taking out Spearmen in 3 attacks instead of 5, while negating all but 4 damage. That leads to them being able to take 4 times as many hits as the Knight, leading to drastically different outcomes. But now let's give the spears the Pikemen upgrade, adding 7 more bonus damage against cavalry. In this case, the Knights are predictably overwhelmed, while the Cataphracts can still edge out a slight victory. Against Spearmen, all but 3 bonus damage was negated, whereas Pikes have 10 extra damage not being blocked, meaning Pikemen is a significant upgrade. Even still, it's clear the Spearmen line is not a cost-effective counter to Cataphracts. One-on-one, again, there's 12 damage going through with each attack, which is still much less than the 24 that the Knight is taking. And I should point out again that Byzantines don't have bloodlines, so they're very close to losing one-on-one with equal upgrades. The gold cost isn't even really an issue in Castle Age either, so I can't see a compelling value proposition here for the Pikes. Looking now at the Camels, this may seem like a good response to Cataphracts as they won't be taking the Cataphracts anti-infantry bonus. At the same time, the Camel's own anti-cavalry bonus is likewise being completely negated by the 12 hidden armor. The results are less dramatic than against the Spearmen, but again Cataphracts win handily, while Byzantine Knights without bloodlines are at a large disadvantage. Again, just to look at what's happening mechanically one-on-one, the Catapphract is taking 4 damage per attack compared to the Knight's 13. Both units are doing similar damage back against the Camels, meaning the story here really comes down to that hidden armor. So far, I have to say Cataphracts are looking great. You're getting roughly the melee strength of a Knight while negating units that typically threaten Knights the most. So why would a Byzantine player ever make Knights? One big factor we haven't looked at yet is against ranged units. Against crossbows, it's not a huge difference, and I think it's overemphasized at times, but they only take 28 arrows instead of the Knight's 34, assuming you have +2 armor from the blacksmith. Cataphracts have more HP, but having 1 less pierce armor in this case hurts more. When it comes to crossbows and by extension town center arrows, Cataphracts are objectively weaker than the Knight line. Also, it may be less important, but if you only have the first attack upgrade, then villagers also take 4 hits from Knights and 5 from Cataphracts. So in that specific case, having 1 less attack makes them noticeably worse at quickly picking off villagers, though this is a relatively small factor. Monks are another important consideration, as they're equally good at countering both units, so it wouldn't be fully accurate to say the Cataphract is protected from all of the Knight's major weaknesses. Overall though, in Castle Age there's a good argument for and against the Cataphract. At times, it's shockingly good against the Knight's counters, while being very comparable in strength and cost to a Knight without bloodlines. At the same time, it's a little worse against ranged units and raiding in some situations, while being just as vulnerable to monks. Probably the biggest downside in Castle Age though is again it requires a castle to be trained. Of course, this isn't their final form, as they don't yet have trample damage, which is only accessible in Imperial Age, so let's turn our attention there. Looking first at upgrade costs, it initially appears the Elite Cataphract upgrade is cheaper than Cavalier and Paladin upgrades combined. The problem is when you add Logistica for more bonus damage against infantry and trample damage, it brings the total to 2,000 food and 1,400 gold, and this is even after a recent reduction to both the Cataphract's Imperial Age upgrades. That's a big cost, so is it worth it? On the surface, the Imperial Age upgrade gives +3 attack with a hidden 6% attack speed boost, +40 HP, a combined +9 more against infantry, and +4 more resistance to anti-cavalry attacks. In comparison, going from Knight to Paladin adds +4 attack with a hidden 5.5% drop in attack rate, +60 HP, and +1 pierce armor. Clearly, the Paladin is pulling ahead against ranged units, both from an HP and armor perspective, while the Cataphract is doubling down on its specialty against infantry and adding trample damage. The trample damage in question simply works by dealing 5 damage to surrounding units each time it attacks, which completely ignores armor. That trample damage really throws a wrench in everything here, as it's very context dependent. It does absolutely nothing one-on-one, but can add up in large groups. We'll see how it does using some moderately sized armies, keeping in mind the bigger the fight, the better trample damage should perform, as there's just a greater chance to have multiple units nearby. To start things simply head-to-head against Byzantine Paladins, with equal resources, it seems trample damage is balancing things out to make them roughly even. We can tell trample damage is doing a noticeable amount of work here because one-on-one the Byzantine Paladin wins. So the takeaway here is fully upgraded Paladins with Logistica are only on par with a weak Paladin in large groups. Remember, Byzantine Paladins are lacking both Blast Furnace and Bloodlines, and if we try Elite Cataphracts against a similar investment of Frank Paladins in contrast, the Paladins clearly have a large edge. This is just to emphasize we're comparing Cataphracts again to the weak Byzantine Paladins, and not something top tier. It's also illustrative of the fact that strong melee units like Elephants, Paladins, and other heavy cavalry unique units will brute force their way through Cataphracts. But while they're a little underwhelming as a general heavy melee unit, what about against anti-cavalry units? Halberdiers and Camels get their own upgrades in Imperial Age, so does the Cataphract's improvements make them better relative to those units, keep pace, or do a little worse? To start against the Halberdier, this is the age-old question of who counters whom. In this case, I found it's again the Cataphracts coming out ahead, doing even better than they did against Pikes in Castle Age, largely thanks to Logistica. The Paladin, on the other hand, is easily handled with equal resources. Of course, there's no reason Byzantines couldn't also add some cheap skirmishers here to help themselves out. To see it on a smaller scale one-on-one, Cataphracts are taking 21 damage per attack compared to 37 damage. It's mostly the difference in damage output that's striking, and is especially good when trample damage primes Halberdiers to take just 2 direct attacks. To emphasize that point, here's a comparison of Cataphracts with and without Logistica, which remember means they're lacking trample damage and an extra +6 against infantry. In this test, they end up doing noticeably worse, but also at the same time maybe better than expected. The final results were only about 10% less of their total HP left over, and they still of course win against Halberdiers. Clearly, most of their strength is from their built-in attack bonus and damage negation, but at the same time, Logistica is also making an impact. To quickly use the champion as another infantry example, we again see against fully upgraded Cataphracts they can handle them pretty easily, whereas Byzantine Paladins, which admittedly are pretty weak as Paladins go, come out from the fight about evenly matched. Again, this just emphasizes how much better Cataphracts are at dealing with infantry, and the only real argument you could make for infantry is that they cost significantly less gold. So for a civilization with a strong infantry bonus like Japanese, you could probably come up with a situation where you'd eventually overwhelm Cataphracts with nothing but infantry, but it's a tough way to do it. One-on-one, both Byzantine cavalry units win, but Cataphract is much more to the point, taking just 3 attacks. We'd expect similar dominance against other infantry units, including Eagle Warriors, who have their anti-cavalry bonus negated entirely. Moving on now to the Heavy Camel, again as a group with balanced resources, Cataphracts win and Paladins lose. Just like in Castle Age, there's nothing really unexpected here, with Cataphracts again flipping the regular cavalry-camel relationship on its head. Where things start to fall apart quite a bit though is against Arbalesters. Assuming everyone's fully upgraded, elite Cataphracts actually take just 30 Arbalester arrows, whereas Paladins take 54. This is the result of a combination of lower HP and, more importantly, Pierce Armor, where they're taking 5 damage instead of 3 per shot, while also starting with lower HP. Unlike against Paladins, Arbalesters are actually quite a good counter to Cataphracts, and something to be aware of when playing either as Byzantines or against them. So to wrap up with some closing thoughts, as you'd expect from a well-designed game like Age of Empires 2, Cataphracts aren't necessarily a strict upgrade or downgrade from the Knightline. While they excel against infantry and camels, the trade-off is they're more difficult to produce due to upgrade costs and building castles, while struggling a lot more against ranged units, especially in Imperial Age. That said, thinking about how they fit within the Byzantines overall, I think they still have a niche role. With various unit discounts, Byzantines already have great anti-cavalry and anti-archer options, so the Cataphract completes the set as a dedicated anti-infantry unit that really isn't hard countered by any generic unit, or it can be used in situations where you don't want to use the hand cannoneer. They're also a surprisingly decent response to the classic Halberdier and siege combination. While the focus here was on how they compare to the knight given all their similarities, looking into it, they're really quite different in how they perform against many types of units. They're a great tool to keep in mind as Byzantines in your never-ending quest of countering everything your opponent throws at you. That'll do it for this one though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.